Okay. Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the meeting for the City Council for June 30th, 2022. At this time, Madam Clerk, roll call and posting the agenda. And I understand there's a couple of council members that you'll announce that are going to be here today.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Perrello, Councilmember Tehran,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Here,
Councilmember Basua, and Councilmember Madrigal will be absent today. Thank you. The
Thank-
posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall Bulletin Board on June 17th, 2022.
thank you, Madam Clerk. Our next item is an appointment item 530, City Manager Department, and the presentation is by the County of Ventura on vector control, and we're going to have Mr. Ron Ventura. And the recommendation is that we receive a verbal report regarding the Ventura County Resource Management Agency Environmental Health Division Vector Control Program and provide any comments. Welcome, Ron.
Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, City Manager Nguyen, council members, Oxnard staff, and the residents of Oxnard. Thank you for having me here. Let's see if this works. Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. Get rid of me.
Mhm.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Ron Ventura. I'm a supervisor with the Ventura County Environmental Health Division's Vector Control. I have here Carrie Zvoboda, who is the lead program expert for the vector control. And I'm very pleased to kind of give you an overview of the Vector Control Report 2021. I provided you guys some copies. Yeah, it's interesting. Vector Control has provided vector control services throughout the county of Ventura since the mid-70s. Since then, it's kind of changed, and eventually now we are funded by a special fee assessment, and you could find that on your property taxes. So every year you're going to see a line item that says vector control, and on that is my direct phone number to my desk.
Mhm.
So I typically get a handful of calls throughout the year from residents of the county asking, what is vector control?
Mhm. You want to drive? Okay.
Huh. I think it is, yes. Perfect. Thank you. So what is vector control? So people think it's some math algorithm or, something for the city lights or something like that. But I explained to them, well, vector is an insect or other animal that can transmit disease to other animals and even humans. So what the vector control does is we look at a variety of vectors in the county. So on the left, we have some ground squirrels. Residents of Ventura County make their way up into the Los Padres, go camping, go through the Sespe, maybe camp at Wheeler Gorge. They're around ground squirrels all the time. We work in conjunction with California Department of Public Health and our state biologist to determine whether or not these guys carry any diseases. We capture them. We take the ectoparasites off them, and they're basically fleas, and test these fleas for Yersinia pestis, which is the causative agent for the plague. So another common vector that we also look at are ticks. So that's the item on the right. Again, county residents end up going to the beach. They do hiking trails, Sycamore Canyon, all these canyons. They brush up against some grass and they come home with a little hitchhiker in the form of this tick. And unfortunately, ticks can be a vector of a variety of diseases, one of those diseases being Lyme disease. In fact, June was Lyme Disease Awareness Month, where we worked with our assistant PIO for the county, Jackie Nunez, who posted a lot of this stuff on social media. So that was a big first for us. But most of what we do, 90% of the vector control program, we look at mosquitoes. That's the vector of our main concern. So here we have a little mosquito landing on somebody's arm. And it's important to understand that mosquitoes are generally a nuisance. So you're out, it's summertime, you're ready to go have a barbecue out in your patio and you're getting inundated. These mosquitoes are biting you. So at least they're a nuisance. At worst, they can vector a variety of diseases, including West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis, and Western equine encephalitis. So stuff you do not want to get. So if you are getting bit by mosquitoes, we definitely want to know. So who are we? You know who I am and Carrie, but we are also 4 full-time vector technicians that essentially take care of the vector control duties throughout the entire county. On our left, we have Eli Hernandez, Alex Gaskell, Ed Alamillo, and Steve Solomon, and they're driving around in their Colorados doing a variety of vector control tasks. So here on the right, we got a little map and their associated districts. If you look at the area for Ed Alamillo, we do show that the city of Oxnard is kind of what he's looking at. And he could be reached at his email at ed.alamillo@ventura.org or by his phone number there.
And Ron, excuse me, those are the new districts
Those districts have been that way for a while.
for a while. Is that the ones that were just recently redistricting?
These are districts for vector control. So
They don't coincide with the supervisorial.
they do not. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So these are our guys. Ed Alamillo is specifically in Oxnard. But 4 vector technicians full-time cannot do all the work that's required for the entire county. So we're very fortunate to have seasonal staff come on board. And we're very proud of our seasonal staff. They offer, a whole dynamic aspect to our area. Most of our staff come from, recent graduates from college, Cal State Northridge, Channel Islands, UCSB, even those that are still going to Oxnard and Ventura colleges tend to look for seasonal staff positions that are generally held from April to October, which we consider mosquito season. So they come on board. In fact, we do have an open recruitment. So if there's anybody who's taking a science core of classes and interested in environmental health and mosquitoes, you can go to Ventura County Job Opportunities and find this recruitment open under RMA Tech 1. So we do need about 4 additional seasonal staff this year. So generally what we do, our seasonal staff and full-time employees do, we do a variety of vector control activities. Here's Alex Gaskell visiting a vector site, and he's got a dipper, which has a 16-ounce cup at the end. And what he does is he goes to this site, dips in some stagnant water to determine whether or not he needs to do treatment if there's breeding of mosquitoes. So if we look on the right, we have approximately 2,800 known vector sites. For some odd reason, these sites continually breed water throughout the year. If we look at City of Oxnard specifically, we have 272 sites. Out of those 272 vector sites within the City of Oxnard, they were inspected over 1,600 times. And out of those 1,600 times, we needed a treatment about 991 times. So there was a treatment. They went to those sites and it was treated almost 1,000 times for mosquito breeding. So if we look in Alex's cup, what do we see? We definitely have evidence of mosquito breeding. So here we go. We got a whole heavy load of larva and pupa in his dipper, which he'll kind of determine what's the necessary treatment. whether it's a physical treatment, a larvicidal treatment, or something else to eliminate that breeding. Here are some sites throughout the city of Oxnard. We got a bunch of different colors and shapes in there, and all that is indicative of is the frequency we go. So some sites we visit weekly, some sites monthly, some sites annually. So depending on what type of site, we'll visit it at different intervals. A typical site kind of maybe a V ditch behind a condo complex or a flood control channel, or could be a basin, could be a curb, could be a street where for some reason these mosquitoes continue to breed. A lot of them are smaller sites, but some of them are very large mosquito breeding sites. And I think we have Ormond Marsh here, which just by looking at this picture, you could see the vastness of the water that's pooling there. Again, a lot of those areas are stagnant, which provides for an incredible breeding ground for mosquitoes to kind of come off here and going into neighborhood communities. So in addition to those vector site inspections, our technicians are answering service requests in the form of complaints, in the form of fish requests, and in the form of dead bird requests. So typically we'll receive complaints from neighbors. Maybe they may, have a barbecue and then all of a sudden feel like, well, am I getting bit up? They look over their neighbor's yard and find an unmaintained swimming pool. They'll call our vector control. Vector control will send out a technician, knock on the door, make contact, and help that homeowner or occupant of that building or home resolve the mosquito issue. Oops, going backwards. So we do offer fish. So we have a mosquito fish that if you had an unmaintained swimming pool or fountain or koi pond, a lot of people harvest water and these wine barrels are big now, and mosquitoes potentially can grow in there. So they'll contact vector control. We'll stop by their house with some fish and either place it in their pond for them, or they'll leave out a bucket and we can place those fish in the bucket. These fish eat mosquito larvae like crazy. I mean, they do a wonderful job and it's a great alternative to larvicides and stuff like that. I did mention we have a dead bird hotline. We work in conjunction with California Department of Public Health, and we're very interested if residents identify corvids, which are ravens and crows that have just recently died. And we're interested because these types of birds are really sensitive to West Nile virus. And when they tend to get bitten by mosquitoes, they will die from it. So if any of you notice a crow, give us a call. We'll have one of our technicians go out, pick up the crow, take it back to the vector lab, swab it and test it for West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis, and Western equine encephalitis. So in addition to all those service requests, our technicians put out a variety of traps because we do want to determine the density in population and type of mosquito in a specific area. So we'll have traps out during the week as New Jersey light traps, AGOs, BG sentinels, and a CDC trap, which is a carbon dioxide trap that actually captures live mosquito in one overnight event. And we'll take those mosquitoes, we'll freeze them and test those mosquitoes again for a variety of encephalitis viruses, including the West Nile virus. So we're very busy. We got all our vector sites. We've been going along the same path for years, since the 70s, I said, but we are now kind of faced with a changing environment. Things are changing on us. We're coming into hotter weather conditions. There seems to be less rainfall because we're in a drought. And one big game changer was the introduction of the invasive Aedes mosquito in September of 2020. So hotter weather conditions has kind of taken our mosquito season, which is generally from April to October, and has definitely extended it. And I've actually had, where I was fortunate enough to keep my seasonal staff into November instead of letting them all go the first week of October. So now we're 2 months further into it and still treating and visiting these vector sites and treating. So our mosquito season is almost year round here in the county of Ventura now. Less rainfall is an issue. You know, you'd think less water, less mosquitoes, but in fact, I think precipitation kind of enhances all our flood control channels, all our barrancas, and kind of serves as a washing agent. One of the main things I believe the rainfall does is that in regards to the Santa Clara River mouth or the Santa Clara River, it kind of eventually pushes that sand berm open and allows that river to drain out into the ocean. Because we didn't have the rainfall expected, we didn't have that huge push to break that sand berm, but we still had a lot of discharge from agriculture. We did have wastewater treatment discharge, a lot of urban runoff that ends up pooling in that Santa Clara River estuary.
Ron, you talk about the berm there in Santa Clara. Does that still flood the McGrath Park?
Here is a picture of the McGrath
speaking of
Park.
Okay.
So I
We
guess
had a lot of problems with McGrath Park and the estuary there.
So all that water last year, the berm didn't break in 2021, and it created such incredible flooding. So it spread throughout the Tuolees and everything. And the parking lot, as you drove into the McGrath campground, looked like this. It was almost 18 inches deep.
Okay.
And you can see carp just swimming along the parking lot and stuff. So it was phenomenal. And then, of course, along with all this stagnant water, we had just an exorbitant amount of mosquito breeding that were coming off, you know, the Santa Clara River, the estuary, and in McGrath Park or in the campground.
Yes, sir. Go on, Councilmember.
Thank you. Specifically on this matter, if this is causing a big problem, why don't we break the berm? What do you need from the city of Oxnard to help you to get the berm broken so that we prevent this from happening?
You know, in the past, there used to be a backhoe that used to do exactly that. And then now we have the introduction to the snowy plover.
That's right.
Who rests on the berm, lays its eggs. So, you know, we work with state fish and wildlife and state parks. And we kind of get some information from them to see, you know, if that's even possible. And according to them, because this is an endangered species, it's kind of a no-go situation.
And just to add a little bit to that, Councilmember and Ron, when I was there, we tried to breach the berm and they wouldn't let us because of the species. And you had to have inspectors there making sure that you didn't have any mechanical disturbance of the berm. It had to be a natural.
And rainfall would be that natural push to go ahead and break that berm. So
Exactly.
I think it did finally break in the beginning of the year, which was great. We did have some precipitation and it broke and all that water kind of receded. But of course, there hasn't been any rainfall since that event. And now we're kind of reaching. We're not at this level yet as 2021 was, but it seems if things continue the way they are, we may just be in that same situation. So, you know, we have to kind of challenge ourselves to implement new treatment measures. We have one of our technician who takes a little boat, launches it off harbor, goes into the estuary and applies a larvicide with the aid of the blower to kind of broadcast 15, 20 yards and in hopes to really put a dent in the mosquito population. But still, that isn't enough. And we had to implement an aerial treatment, which we hadn't done in almost 2 decades. So with the assistance of Aspen helicopters, we were able to get this helicopter and they were able to apply pesticide in all the areas, almost, I think it was like almost 70 acres, I believe. So it was a huge area. It was done immediate and trappings after that definitely showed that this was the correct thing to do. We actually just finished a treatment June 21st to the Santa Clara River estuary. And hopefully we put a large dent so people could enjoy the 4th of July season without being inundated by mosquitoes.
Good.
One of the biggest game changers and challenges for us was the invasive Aedes mosquito. Here's an invasive Aedes mosquito. They got some very identifiable marks on them. But these mosquitoes are not like our native mosquitoes that breed in the larger areas of the estuaries and pools. These mosquitoes instead like to live in and around your home because they find you as their host. So other counties in California have been dealing with them for years. And like I said, September 2020, they were now introduced. Currently, there had only been one identification in the city of Oxnard for this mosquito, and that was in October of 2020. So since then, we haven't found Aedes in the city of Oxnard. Right now, they're kind of in Simi Valley and kind of come in this way. But they're
Councilmember Tehran, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
oh, sorry.
The question came to mind as you're going over this information. I'm wondering if this Aedes mosquito, does it have a higher propensity for transmission of disease, or are there, what is it that puts it apart from our native mosquitoes?
Well, the invasive Aedes mosquito is a day biting mosquito, which is completely unlike our native mosquitoes who typically bite, from dusk till dawn. So that's one thing. One of these Aedes mosquito, they just bite intensely. I mean, one of these mosquitoes will bite you 30 times. So you think there's many of them when it's just this one mosquito. One of the issues with the invasive Aedes mosquito is they have the ability to transmit some tropical diseases such as Zika, dengue, yellow fever, and chikungunya, which those diseases aren't currently, transmitted in California. There's been no evidence of domestic transmission whatsoever, but we do have people visiting areas, where these diseases are endemic. So if you travel down South America, Costa Rica, all these places, and you come back viremic with one of these diseases, and we now have the Aedes aegypti, the invasive Aedes mosquito in your property, now there's a higher likelihood we could have a local transmission of these diseases. But as of to date, I think only Florida and Texas has had the notoriety of having a domestic transmission. So.
Mhm.
So they breed in different places. This is one of our technicians, Steve Solomon, who is finding a lawn drain. These things are on the curve. They run about 40 feet, and these things get clogged holding water, and it's just like a breeding ground for these invasive mosquitoes. So we've kind of changed strategies. And now when we receive complaints of an invasive Aedes type of mosquito in the area, we'll email that caller a bunch of information, a checklist to check their property to ensure that they are not the cause. Once they've done that, our technician goes and visits them and kind of gives a thorough look and does a little more advanced look and does treatment if necessary, as well as may place some traps in their yard to truly identify that what they're experiencing is the invasive Aedes mosquito. So a lot of challenges with that mosquito. Since then, we've been kind of dependent on many of the cities, and I'm glad you guys have me here talking to you and, possibly solicit some information from code enforcement. We work with a lot of city code enforcements. We work with a lot of parks in the cities, homeowners associations to really kind of get the information out to the residents to say, hey, we have these issues. Give Vector Control a call. Let us know what you're experiencing. We will create a service request and go out, investigate, and treat accordingly to ensure that you as residents of Ventura County are not being bitten by mosquitoes.
Mhm.
So I do encourage the city of Oxnard residents to give us a call. You do have my number here as well as Carrie's number, but we're not always at our desk. We've created some hotline numbers that are very useful, and we encourage residents of the county to call the mosquito complaint hotline. Let us know where you're at and what you're experiencing. If you know you have the need for mosquito fish, give that mosquito fish request hotline a call. If you do see a dead crow, raven, or scrub jay or any type of bird, give the West Nile virus bird hotline a call. We'll send a technician out to pick it up and test that bird for disease. And if you do need additional information, you could go to our website. And I do definitely encourage, people to give us a call. And if they have questions, as well as council members, I invite you to let me know what they are.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Gary. Councilmember Tehran has a question for you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Very informative and learned a lot of new stuff. So I'm hoping the general public, folks who are tuning in and watching it or watch it in the future, will get some really good info as well. I just have two questions. You had mentioned the larvicide treatments that will sometimes occur. I'm just wondering, do the larvicides have any effect on other organisms, either through direct contact or direct ingestion, or through secondary exposure, like if they ate larvae that was killed by the larvicide?
Right. Carrie, do you want to?
Sure. We use several different products for
Yep.
larvicides. Primarily, we
Gary, use the mic. I
okay.
think.
The products that we primarily use are very target specific, and they have minimal, if any, effects on non-target organisms when used within label rates. The vast majority of treatments involve BTI, a bacteria on a corn cob medium, and then there's another strain of bacteria in a similar product, and those are both organically listed for use on crops for other things in different formulations. But there are, in different situations, we may have to use different products, and we're really conscious about those unwanted impacts. So we try to choose do the most good with the least harm under integrated pest management principles. And yes, some of them used in certain situations can impact non-target organisms, but that's something we really avoid in most cases.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, maybe either of you might have some recommendations for residents on the best ways that they can have a preventative role in vector control, especially for mosquitoes.
Yeah, as Ron mentioned a little bit, public information is very important to what we do, and even more so in the last couple of years with the invasive Aedes mosquito because of that. The peridomestic aspect of it, as opposed to the creeks and channels and marshes, it really loves the little lawn drains and saucers under potted plants, things that we can't easily access. And so as people become aware, and when they do get into your neighborhood, it's hard not to be aware because they are so bothersome, but people are reached by postcards that we send out. Ron included some in the printed version of the annual report we gave you. When we have a neighborhood, we use targeted mail routes to send out those postcards and give people the tips. We'll have some of our technicians go door to door with door hangers around hotspot and request people call so we can have that conversation with them. And we would really appreciate if you could reach out to us. We could explore ways for you guys to include messaging. Water conservation is a big part of it. And then just eliminating any and all standing water on your property. A teaspoon or more that persists for 7 days can produce these mosquitoes, and they're really hard to get rid of once they get their foot in the door. So
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And maybe our staff can put that in their website too, if we get that information for the public, especially now that the summer's coming around.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Made me feel a little itchy and crawly, but it's good information. Thank
We
you.
have Mayor Pro Tem wants to ask a question. McDonald.
I just have a comment. I wanted to thank you for the presentation. I don't think people realize that even though Oxnard considers itself an urbanized area, that a lot of the vectors you showed up there in pictures, they're here. I've seen pretty much every one of those. I live in about a 110-year-old house in an older part of the city with a lot of old vegetation. And we have crows, we have rats, we have possums, just about everything you can think of wanders through the yard at one time or another. So the opportunity is here. And no matter how clean you keep your yard, and ours is very clean. They get up in the fruit trees. They like to eat the fruit. and that attracts other things. So this is a very valuable service. And in a former life, I spent 5 years as the code compliance manager here in Oxnard. And we're very familiar with your group for coming down and doing a lot of good work for us. And it was a good working relationship. So thank you for all that you and your team do. It's a very much appreciated service.
Absolutely. I appreciate this. I appreciate you having us and giving us the opportunity to let the residents know of Oxnard. There is somebody to take a look at this.
Thank
And
you.
if you have any of these experiences, do feel free to give Vector Control a call.
Thank you, Ron. And I'm sure our code compliance officers are listening to your presentation. And thank you so much for excellent presentation. Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Councilmember
Yes.
Morello. Mhm.
Number one, I want to thank the both of you for coming. Thank you very much for coming to our city and sharing your information. A few questions. You mentioned that you were possibly looking for 3 employees to work, and if they'd had any background in science. Are there any specific classes that you would recommend of these people take at the junior college or local Oxnard Junior College?
You know, any science core, even basic science classes at a community college level, I've accepted all those students.
Biology.
So any interest in science, biology, environmental sciences, even water science was one, just to get you in the door to really feel if this is something you'd be interested in.
That's excellent. Yeah.
I really appreciate the second gentleman. I apologize with your
Gary.
name. I appreciate you using the comment, quote, used within the label rates. A lot of people figure that if you're using pesticide, people are going hog wild and poisoning the environment. There's a label rate. You're using it within the label identified rate. And thank you for adding that to the equation. The treatment sites. In your book, you had treatment sites. A lot of people have flowers and pots, maybe spare tires. The water collects in them and are perfect sites. I was totally unaware of the drainage where the gentleman was sticking in where the water collects. And yet I can tell you, living in a neighborhood and walking it, I've seen water standing in those things. So I appreciate you pointing that out to us. The second thing, we show pictures of your staff out in areas where it's identified as high mosquito. What brand of repellent do your people use?
Oh,
Well, it's really the active ingredient, and there's lots of things on the shelves. We go with the EPA approved and CDC recommended active ingredients, and DEET is the old tried and true. And then now there's some new ones, picaridin, botanical leaf derived, called oil of lemon eucalyptus. And then there's 2-1-decanone, paramethyldiol, and even an Avon Skin So Soft product. They're the only ones that use IR 3535. All that can be found on our website. And
You're killing me with, I couldn't write.
sorry, DEET, I know I'm
But
rattled through it.
I appreciate that because, I mean, somebody's going to ask me, well, what do they use if they're getting eaten alive?
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
So,
And Mayor, the last comment.
okay.
I do appreciate, I don't believe there's one person on this council that's not an environmentalist, and we want to have the snowy plover. But when we see the amount of water that's stagnant because that berm is not broken, a one-time effort by our council, the county, and whatever state legislator we need to get the berm broken, I think it'd be well worth our effort. And I'm willing to work with you or anybody on this council, county, whoever your bosses are, to get that done. Because we shouldn't have to have you putting your people at risk and our residents potentially being at risk for a simple matter of breaking a berm, which is impacting a state park and the estuary at the Santa Clara River.
And I think, Ron, excuse me for interrupting,
Thank you.
but I think the Public Works, Jeff Pratt is a person to contact on that item too. So,
yeah, we've talked a lot with state parks and Fish and Wildlife
Right.
and really kind of collaborating with a lot of different entities to
Mhm.
get this going. And I really appreciate your support on that matter.
thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, Gary.
All right, gentlemen,
Thank you.
have a
Mhm.
great night.
Okay. Okay, our next item is, this is the opening ceremonies. This is, at this time, we'd like to have us help us do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd like to have a moment of silence for all the 53 people that passed away in a truck trailer over in Texas, and it was really a horrible thing that happened to all those 53 items. So please join me in saluting our flag in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republics for which it stands, one nation, Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Okay, our next item is, let me see. This item's not in the agenda. And I have, the first speaker that I have on my list is Henry Alvarado Sapien. Madam Clerk, is Henry available?
Mayor, Mr. Alvarado Sapien has not dialed in. He's not available at this time. Thank you.
Okay, then we have our next item. We have, let me see, P.W. Robinson. You got 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor,
Mhm.
Council. I just was going to respond to a couple of rebuttal items from Mr. Gwynn last time I spoke here. I talked about the new shelter going in and how it didn't add any homeless beds, any shelter beds to our current inventory. It keeps it right at the same amount. So we're going to be at 8% sheltering rate for the foreseeable future. And he pointed out that there were permanent housing units involved in this $40 million project. And I have to say that it's $700,000 per. I couldn't be happier that there are those units, permanent units. But this is one of the reasons why people hate the homeless, is because when government gets involved in bulk housing type things, the numbers are always ridiculous. But you're not going to see me stand up against that, because without that, we'd be at 4%, 2%. You know, there's a shelter, same company in Ventura, the city of Ventura, run by Mercy House as well. And that was a building that was already there and it was empty. And they took that building and they operated that way. That's a good way to open up homeless shelters. And if we opened up 10 more shelters, well, not of that size, we'd have to open up 16 more shelters of the size of the Ventura one to get to the shelter rate that Orange County has, which is 55%. And then the other, well, I'll just skip that. Talking about the death rate, I talked about homeless death rate here a lot. And our death rate in Ventura County being the highest I can find in the country. And what I'm talking about is the coroner death rate, not overall death rate. Homeless people die of old age at the average age of 53. That happens, that's routine. If you're in a shelter and you get sick, they take you to a hospital, you die there. The coroner doesn't come in for that. The hospital handles it. Coroners handle people who die on the ground, in a field, in a ditch, by the tracks, or shot in the head at the train station. Those are coroner issues. So I'd like to hear a plan from somebody at some point to systematically open shelters for people, so that we don't have so many people who are outside in the
30
cold.
seconds.
Deafening
Go ahead,
silence.
Mr. Robinson. Go ahead.
The other thing I said that Mr. Gwynn commented to after my comments were over, which was surprising. I said, we have to look at these numbers and figure out, why do we hate the homeless more than other counties? And he responded and said, we don't. People of Oxnard don't hate the homeless. I said, no, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to the people who can make a decision to build more shelters, not residents.
Thank you,
who
Mr.
might
Robinson.
vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sal Gonzalez. Thank you. 3 minutes, Sal.
Yes,
Welcome.
good evening,
Mhm.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. My name is Sal Gonzalez, and I'm the Community Director for the Knights of Columbus Council 750. Tonight, I'm delivering to you a letter from our Knights of Columbus opposing City Council support for a right to abortion, or as some of you prefer to say, a woman's reproductive freedom. We also ask you not to support the proposed state constitutional amendment known as SCA, which also supports the right to abortion. We crafted this letter more in response to a request that came from some of you, members of the city council, for support of the right to abortion. We have learned that you are scheduled to consider a resolution on this matter next Tuesday. Our Knights of Columbus wanted you to receive this letter early for you to have enough time to read it before you consider the matter next Tuesday. We will be here. I'm quite sure you know who the Knights of Columbus are and what we stand for. So I'm sure that you are not surprised to receive this letter. I've also been asked to ask you not to give any financial support of any sort to Planned Parenthood. And we do thank you for listening to us tonight, and we look forward to being here next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Okay, our next speaker is Pat Brown. Thank you, Pat. You got 3 minutes.
I've lived in the Royal Palms Mobile Home Park since the fall of 1993. In those days, things were a lot different. Now we have homeless. They live in the alleyways out just outside the mobile home park, and they leave clutter and move on after a while. When somebody tells them to get lost, they move on somewhere else, but they leave all the big messes, and it's a constant problem now. It's getting worse. I would say as the months go by, it's getting worse and worse and worse. We're wondering how much longer do we have to put up with this. They also like to crawl over the block wall from the north section of the park right into the alley. They like to climb over the block wall, then use our laundry rooms and our showers and whatnot as if they lived there. And then they come out, walking out, and as if nothing had happened. And this is becoming worse and worse and worse all the time. I don't know what we're going to do about it. I don't know if anybody can do anything about it. I know that we've informed the police department a number of times. The only thing you can do is to inform them so much that they have people out there constantly, to try to stop it, but it just doesn't do any good. It just keeps on going. So I just thought I would let you know, it's not a good thing, and it's in the downtown area. We're at Driffle Boulevard, which is the only street address number for Driffle. And it was created by Mr. Driffle, by the way. Yeah, one of our early members of the city of Oxnard. So anyway, this is a problem, and it's not going to go away just ignoring it. We've tried that many times. We've been trying that for years, and that doesn't do any good. So if you guys got any ideas on what we can do to get rid of these guys, I don't know. But we're in the downtown area, so that's where they accumulate. So I don't know what else to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, and we continue working on that issue too. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, do we have any additional speakers on this item?
We do not have any additional speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
And we did have initially Mr. Henry Alvaro site. He never called. Okay.
He did not call in. Thank you.
Thank you. So then we're going to continue to item E. This is a report to the city manager. Is it Mr. City Master, Mr. Nguyen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mhm.
I don't have anything specific tonight from my office, but we're going to have the Public Works Director, Mr. Michael Wolf, come up and give us an update about the saga of the drought here on the West Coast. And we also have an order that needs to be ratified, an
Okay.
emergency order. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. So tonight there is a couple action items that we're seeking from the council. It's a resolution. That resolution is the continuance of the proclamation of emergency that occurred back in May 17th. And then also the ratification of a director's order that we signed last week. And I'll go over briefly what's in that director's order. The two major points are the state's demand to not allow potable water to be used to irrigate non-functional turf in commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. And so that's in that order. And the other part of it is, again, a directive through Met from the state is to change from allowing for 15 minutes of irrigation per station down to 10. So the two biggest changes in the director's orders. There are some additional identifications in the director's order about what functional turf is, the fact that you can allow for exceptions for food plants in terms of watering by hand. We also include in that director's order information about the enforcement process that will take. So with that, I'm available for questions.
So, Michael, I've been asked, this again, the 10 minutes is for lawn, right? For lawn watering, not for the actual, like for lemon trees or shrubbery and so forth.
So the 10 minutes is for irrigation in residential properties for the most part, using your conveyance system for irrigation. There are a lot of exceptions allowed for hand watering. So this is if you use a mechanical system, your irrigation system, it's 10 minutes total for the 1 day a week.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mhm.
Mr. Wolf, thank you very much for the presentation. And I just want to tell people, I got a call earlier this week from a friend of mine who said they had a sprinkler salesperson come over to talk about low flow sprinkler heads. And part of his sales pitch was, if you don't reduce your water consumption, the city of Oxnard will come out and throttle your water flow so you don't have enough to run your house, or very little. And I checked with Mr. Castro over in water distribution, and that is nothing more than an exaggerated sales pitch that is not true. And I would encourage anyone, and there may be penalties if you don't, try and reduce and save water, but throttling is not going to be one of them. And if someone comes by and it sounds like a sales pitch, it probably is a sales pitch. And if anyone has any questions, I would encourage them, call the city, look on the website, get the straight information, but don't fall prey to people that may want to be unscrupulous to try and use an emergency as a means of selling a new product and making money off of it. So I guess the buyer beware phrase would be appropriate here. So thank you.
Yes, sir. The good point, the important point there is contact us, so we'll give you some information. There are other agencies around us that are using those orifices to throttle down. That's not part of our current process, as outlined in our ordinance, or sorry, in our director's order. We do outline the steps that for enforcement. It does not currently include that. Mr. Mayor, if you won't mind indulging me for just one more minute,
Go ahead.
I can ask Megan to hold up a sign, please.
Okay.
You'll be seeing these signs,
Oh, okay.
and I'll bring it up here.
Megan, you want to come up to the, thank you. Oh, good.
So you'll be seeing these signs around. Again, we're trying to get the message out, the importance of a proper use of water, our restrictions, or the restrictions that are in place. So you'll be seeing these signs around. So I just wanted to make mention that they'll be out and about.
Okay, good. So that's, let me see, that's at oxnardwater.org for more additional information. Great. Thank you. Councilman Turan.
Thank you. Real quickly, I have two other questions, but for the sign, can you flip it to the other side, Mr. Wolf, just so we can show that? Oh, I thought it was bilingual, that it was Spanish on the other side. Oh, is it?
Yeah, bilingual.
Oh, wow. I was looking at it and reading it in English. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. And thank you for having our bilingual signs there. Two quick questions. One is a reminder for the public, and one is a question regarding what we're allowed to use water for. The first reminder, can you remind the general public what our water restrictions are right now? How many days per week, and which side of with your address, even or odd, like which day you're allowed to water on?
It is 1 day a week. It's Saturday or Sunday. And odd addresses are on Sunday. And even addresses are on Saturday.
Great. Thank you for that. And my question, there are a number of developments in the city of Oxnard that have jacaranda trees that have the beautiful purple flowers that bloom at this time of year. beautiful looking trees, but they sure make a mess when those flowers fall. And I know folks in the past will sweep them up, but they may use a water hose or power wash them on the sidewalk. Is that an activity that is allowed right now in our current restrictions?
It is actually, it's not allowed, and actually think it's in our current code. It's not even part of our emergency proclamation, the use of water like that. So we have actual code sections, and I'm blanking on the year that the council passed that are in place water restrictions. And the resolutions that we've been doing recently actually just add to those. So there are in place code codified requirements, and one of those examples may be that example that you gave is hosing down your property. The other side of this is the resolutions that we're doing now is that 1 day a week, right? So in the resolution, we're doing much more restrictive items because of the direction from the state and from Met, but we do have some sections of our code that are just codified, and those are the water waste opportunities like that.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. And essentially, we shouldn't be using our potable water to wash down hardscape, wash down houses. We should be using it the 1 day a week for irrigation if we need to, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Perillo.
Thank you very much. Number one, can you go over the two big changes you addressed? Number two, the salesman coming around trying to sell the orifices because there would be potentially the city could put a restrictor on there. In LA County, in the newspaper, they're indicating that is in some areas. It is because this water situation is changing, correct me if I'm wrong, changing day by day. That is an option in the future, but now it is not an option here. We're very fortunate that we live in a coastal area, but the water impact of the state does not bypass Oxnard, California. So can you please give the two most important new updates that you had, the two big changes at the very beginning of your speech?
So I
think it's worth hearing again.
The director's orders is what Councilmember Pearl is talking about. The two major items is changing from allowing for 15 minutes. It used to be 15 minutes per station for irrigation, again, of your property, down to 10 minutes per station total of 10 minutes. And the other one was from the state directing that no potable water to be used to irrigate non-functional turf in commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. And we define non-functional turf in our director's order. It's also available on our website, frequently asked questions. But that's the other directive.
So just for me and the people that are raising Cain with me, specifically the comment, I'm going to water my grass and it's going to be green come hell or high water. What do we identify as non-functional turf?
So the easiest way to say this, because it's quite a long definition, if you wouldn't mind, actually, city attorney can read it exactly from our director's order.
So
The city attorney.
Section 6 of the director order states non-functional turf is a ground cover surface of mowed grass that is ornamental and not otherwise used for human recreation purposes. Non-functional turf does not include school fields, sport fields, and areas regularly used for civic or community events.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. Those are my questions. And thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so the recommendation is City Council adopt a resolution for this item. Do we have a motion?
Move the recommended action.
Okay, moved by Mayor Pro Tem and second by Councilman Lopez. Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Mr. City Manager, we're good? Okay, our next item is, this is City Council Housing Authority. And this is a time for the members of the City Council to make any brief announcements or any brief reports on their activities, and also to have any items they'd like to place on the agenda for future action. And also we have 3 minutes for this item. Council members, we have Councilmember Perillo.
Recently, some residents reached out to me that reside adjacent to Citrus Grove Lane by the post office on C Street. And there's an issue that I've sent to the city staff with respect to a piece of property that's become tonight's really relevant. And I hope they're watching it. I asked them to. their complaints about rats and the homeless living in a specific area. I've also given to the city management the area of certain specific dead trees. And I want to compliment development services. I want to take my hat off to development services. An issue was brought to my attention by residents, Mr. and Mrs. Godwin, sometime past, for a property that was fenced, elevated in height, and being used as a storage yard, but it hadn't gone through the permit process. And so over a long period of time, much back and forth, it's been deemed that they have not followed the rules. And I did share this with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has changed its name recently, but I shared with Mr. Lindholm because Miss Lindholm, because there's a perception that I'm anti-business. But my purpose in raising this issue is the people that are operating there as a trucking yard are in competition with the people that have the rules of the road and are following the rules in the city. It's an unfair playing field when somebody takes advantage. When somebody throws their weight around and figures they can get away with breaking the rules in the city of Oxnard and they're not called on it, it disservices everyone in the city that follows the rules. So my hat's off again to development services. Thank you all that are involved, and the city attorney's office that was involved also. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tomorrow's the Ventura County Transportation Commission meeting. And probably people have seen the articles in the paper of late regarding the shoreline train service. Used to be Fillmore and Western Railway Service. They've got a new provider there now. Being unable to reach an agreement with the city of Fillmore about using a utility yard there for train storage. VCTC staff has been working very closely with both sides on that. And while it doesn't look like Fillmore is going to come to fruition, there are other opportunities out there that will allow the railway to continue to stay here and continue to operate. So, some of the articles made it sound like the sky was falling, the railway was packing up and leaving town. That's not going to happen. Our staff is working very diligently with people towards a successful resolution. The second thing is, in the last month or maybe a little bit longer, I've been receiving concerns about 3 parcels on South G Street and about the 700 block that were just loaded with junk. And I contacted Andrew Dixon over in code compliance. He was aware of it. He had been working with a reluctant property owner about cleaning it up. And he kept on it. He kept everyone informed. And I'm happy to say that yesterday he sent me pictures. It was on the final day of the last notice that the property owner sent a crew in and probably picked up I would suspect maybe a ton, maybe a little bit more of junk off of these 3 lots. So kudos to code compliance. It's a long, arduous process. It's not easy, but Mr. Dixon, his staff, his supervisors and development services under which they're housed, everybody did a great job. So thank you very much to the staff involved in that. And I can tell you, there are some very pleased residents over in that area of town across from Parque de Leon behind the community center. So good job to all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And the neighborhood's going to be real happy about that too. Thank you so much. Councilman Perrella, do you have additional comments or we don't? Okay, then next, Councilman Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first thank Diversity Collective and all those who worked together to have the Pride event that happened this past weekend. I was really happy to see that it was a successful, well-attended event. I apologize I wasn't able to go. We unfortunately had to go out of town at the last minute, but I did hear great things about it. And so I want to thank all those who organized from the community and thank our planning and our community development services folks for helping them to put on that event with permitting and everything for all the different activities they wanted to do. I also want to thank the city, all of our city manager and all of our executive team and all of our frontline staff. This is June 30th, the last day of June. And it's not something that we highly publicized, but I think it's very important to know that all of our city facilities where we have a flagpole, the Progress Pride flag was flown over that facility in recognition and honoring of Pride Month. So thank you to everyone who had that, but also know that the inclusivity and standing with those in our community who identify as LGBTQ or have that allyship for the population and the community. I just want to thank everyone for that. I also want to congratulate the Wagon Wheel neighborhood. They are the newest neighborhood for the neighborhood council system. And their next meeting, they will adopt the bylaws after reviewing them. But they've never had a neighborhood council before, and now they have one. They have an executive board. And I think Ms. Shapiro in the city manager's office will have to confirm it, but I believe this is the first, or I don't know about the first, but the only right now all-female executive board out of the neighborhood council system. And so it was great to see about 20 to 25 residents that showed up, and they had some really great discussion on a number of items, and looking forward to all the great work that they're going to do as a neighborhood and as an executive board. So congratulations to all those who were elected, and thank you to the residents who came out. I'm looking forward to it. And I had on my notes the property that Councilmember Perello had mentioned as well. And so I'll just give him thanks, and thanks to the residents who brought that forward. And we'll keep an eye on it and see what we can do to meet some resolution for everybody involved. So thank you. Those are my comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. Very quickly, a few updates. So last night we had I attended the community meeting for the South Oxnard Aquatic Center. We had some really good input and a lot of excitement from those who were able to attend about the next steps with the planning of the aquatic center. And it was really great to see what this potential and what this aquatic center is going to look like. So we do have another meeting on August 1st, and we'll definitely be putting information out there. I know our city staff has been working to get the word out there, and especially those who were able to attend, and hopefully other members here, my colleagues can who are able to attend on August 1st can be there. And I know we have the Parks and Rec a resolution coming on Tuesday, but I do want to get ahead and help get the word out about the Oxnard Pal Kids Fest that is happening next Friday, July 8th from 12 to 3 at College Park in South Oxnard. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's been a lot of work by city staff and the rec department to put this on. So I'm really looking forward to that and want to encourage residents who are able to attend to bring their kids. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Perello, additional information.
Just a short comment. I want to thank Councilman Madrigal for bringing up the LGBTQ and the events that took place with that. There are certain organizations and certain segments of our community, of the nation, that are under attack. One of them was mentioned tonight, and I would be a hypocrite if I didn't mention this. I support Planned Parenthood. I have for years. I will not stop supporting Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is much more than abortions. Planned Parenthood is offering contraceptive information for residents they're afraid to ask their parents. Planned Parenthood is giving information for people that can't go to the church and ask questions. I support Planned Parenthood, and I thank Mr. Turan, beg your pardon, Mr. Turan, for bringing up another group, which will be the next group that will be in line. If nobody stands up for a group that's under attack, the day that they come up for you, who do you think is going to stand up for you? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. I also like to share that it was an honor for me to be part of the Filipino community of Ventura County event. The salute of graduates, the class of 2022 last Sunday, the 26 over at Oxnard College Performing Arts Center. And I presented on behalf of the city council, on behalf of the city, 46 graduates. I believe that we're really in good hands. You know, half of those individuals are straight A students, and it was just great to see there about 300 to 400 people at the auditorium. So I just want to congratulate the Filipino community for the good work. Last night also had the pleasure of attending the Knights of Columbus Safety Night, honoring our first responders in Ventura County. That included our very own corporate Maria Pena. She couldn't make it, but there was a substitute officer that was there. It took place, and I would thank Chief Benitez and his staff for outstanding work that we do for the community. Additionally, I also want to congratulate Jaime Villa, our EMS coordinator from the Oxnard Fire Department, who also received an award last night, and thank Chief Hamilton and all the firefighters for what they do too. And I know that Jaime had helped over 1,000+ individuals during the pandemic with tests and so forth. And he worked a couple of years without even working 24/7, basically helping out. So it was really an honor to be at the Knights of Columbus last night. And there was at least 240 people there last night celebrating and commending our first responders for that. And it was mentioned too, tomorrow is going to be our New Year's, our new fiscal year, and it's going to be a good year. And we have a lot of good things, as I mentioned before. I want to thank all our city employees, the city manager, thank all our managers for an excellent budget, and I think we're going to have a good year. And additionally, Mayor Pro Tem, I thank you for the cleanup of J Street. I know that Marvin Booth is going to be very happy. Jack Villa from the neighborhood is going to be very happy. And it was one of those lots that apparently became an attractive nuisance, and people were just dumping trash into it. So I think it's going to be nice to have that cleaned up, and potentially we can work with that realtor or the company that's selling that lot. Thank you so much for that. And our next item is going to be item H. And this is, the review of the consent agenda items. And we we have 1 to 9 items on the agenda, consent item. And we have one speaker right now that I know of, and that is Pat Brown. Pat Brown, you have some comments on items 4, 6, and 9 of the consent?
I grew up on a farm in the Northwest,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody had to have wells, their own wells on each farm. And the irrigation for all the fruit orchards and all, it was all on a slope. So the water would come from a big canal, and you would order the water when you wanted to water your orchards. And we used to run the well dry. And at first we thought it was funny. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my folks decided, since I was the oldest child, I was going to have to learn how to go turn the water off and then wait for the water to come into the well, and then prime the pump and start the water up again. And after you go through this a few times, you learn to respect the water a lot more, because you're having to go through all of this mess. And the well where the pump was down below ground level in an area that was about 4 feet deep and about 6 feet wide. And I had to go down in there in order to work on this pump each time with a flashlight and whatnot. It was a mess. And you learn, you only take a bath or a shower once a week. And that's usually on Saturday nights. And you don't just turn the water on the faucet and just let it run. You turn the water on when you've got a glass or something underneath to catch that water as it starts to come out. It's a whole different experience. And I'm sure I'm one of the few people here in Oxnard that had to grow up with this kind of thing. The fact that I'm 81 years old probably is part of it, because by that time, 81 years ago, they probably had nice water here already. But let me tell you, it's not funny. It seems to be funny until it happens to you. And then it's not funny. You start thinking of ways you can save water and use the least amount of it as necessary. Obviously, watering your plants only once a week. We never watered them more than once a week, ever. Once a week was all they ever got. So people just got to stop and think. Because once the water is gone from the city, it's gone. And there's no little priming the pump and waiting for the water to come back in and then starting it back up. No, it won't be that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, we have items 6 and 9 for on this consent. So what is it, 3 and 3 or what? For Pat? Okay. You had 6 and 9 too, so. You had also 6 and 9, in the consent. So, so the question is.
Okay.
What
The
is-
comments on I want to speak on 4, 6, and 9 very
Right,
quickly.
Right.
Solar battery backup. I think this is a great idea. How soon can we get this started? And what all do we have to know about this to be part of it? And who are the best companies to deal with if we're going to have solar energy?
Okay.
Because a year or so ago, we were getting flyers and big paper sheets in the mail all about how we were going to have to sign up for that. And of course, living in a mobile home park, we don't own the park, so we have no place to do that. The Mercy House shelter operation, I think that's a great idea.
That's item 6. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that's item 6.
Mhm.
And item 9, I think that's a great idea. Don't need to say much about it. And
Okay.
item 9 is the traffic signal problem. We had one just a week or so ago, and Oxnard Boulevard seems to be the target most of the time. And when it stops up the traffic, it makes a horrible mess. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Perrella.
I'd like to talk on, I'd like to ask a question on 1, 3, and my notes. I'm sorry. 3, 4, and 7.
Okay, go ahead.
On 3, I have questions for public safety and public works on, I beg your pardon, number 1, the contracts. For public works, contract number 17 and contract number 44, line item 44 and 17. If 17, there was a statement that we spent beg your pardon, Mr. Wolf.
You're talking about item 3.
'17, there was an item for boreless construction. Change order for standby time at Jack and Bore Pit due to unknown obstruction of 14,500. What was that about?
So we have our city engineer Tatiana Arnaud here, but and she can get some more details, but specifically, or in general, it was a concrete footing from an old storm channel from the county. We had to stop our operations. We actually had to figure out how to divert the storm drain. So a lot of that cost was for the diversion of the storm drain, while we were able to remove the old concrete footing, place back any of the wing wall and the other portion of the storm drain, and then finish the Jack and Bore. So it was a old concrete footing from a county channel.
Thank you. And this will not affect the storm flow coming out of the pipe. We'll be able to get the maximum by putting in the pipe where it had to go. We didn't have to put a kink in the pipe, so the flow will go appropriately.
You said storm flow in the pipe, but this is for our AWPF,
Yes.
recycled water. That's correct. It will not affect the
Okay, thank you.
operation of it.
The second one is,
Item 4.
no, there's contracts. There's-
Okay.
There's 4
Like,
items. on this
within
one.
that same 3.
On line 44, for the general public, Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency, I happen to be the representative for the 5 cities in the county that are involved in that. It says purchase order for groundwater extraction charges, $167,000. There are a lot of people that don't understand what that means and how it affects the city of Oxnard. Can you give a little bit of education for everybody,
So
please?
the groundwater manager, Fox Canyon, does require us to pay for any acre foot of water that we extract and produce from the ground. Is about $40 an acre foot. So that cost covers their operational and administrative costs. And they also use it for other things, but they charge us per acre foot that we extract with our wells and deliver to the public.
Thank you, because there are a lot of people that think it's free because we have the wells and we can just pump it out of the ground and it's free. Because I can share with the council, I did experience in Eastern Oregon exactly what Miss Brown was talking about when the well goes dry. And it's not fun. And it usually happens in hot weather, which makes it much more not fun.
And that
And it-
40, I'm sorry, Mr. Pro, that, or Councilman Pro, that $40 is obviously just what we pay Fox Canyon. There's a cost for us to operate the pumps, the electricity, the chemicals. So there's actually an additional cost for every acre foot of groundwater that we produce out of the ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the next is for the police department. There are two items, line item 22 and line item 33. I'll start with the first one. This 33 is the Central Square Technology, and it's a Second Amendment for consulting services agreement for false alarm processing. And I'm just asking one question. Do we recover the cost for these false alarms?
We got Chief Benitez and go ahead, Chief.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Peralta, to answer your question, that is yes. Our recent count has that we've recovered about 94% of our costs. And so it's actually considered to be a very successful program.
That's fantastic, something to brag about. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just to point out too, 4 years ago, we were recovering next to nothing.
City manager, that's something to brag about. We should be putting that out for the general public. I'm glad I asked you the question, Chief.
Important, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, the second one. This is a very personal and important one to me. The Consulting Team International and the identification, professional service agreement to provide comprehensive psychological services for the police department. Chief, can you please share with the public why we do this and why this is necessary?
Yes, Councilmember Perello. This contract has a number of parts to it. And the first part of this 3-year contract deals with pre-employment psychological screening for police officer applicants. And we believe that that is actually an absolute critical function of onboarding new staff with our department, that they are psychologically fit. Second part of this has to do with peer support, which is a growing trend in public safety. This comes in the form of peer support training. It comes in the form of peer support call outs, as well as critical incident debriefs. And that's important because of what is becoming increasingly recognized, what public safety personnel encounter during their careers. There is cumulative trauma based on incidents that they encounter over the course of their career. And I was recently told, and please don't hold me to this, but if the average person experiences 2 very traumatic instances in their life, a public safety employee experiences about 188 to 200. So having these debriefs is especially important, keeping our officers as well as our dispatchers and our professional staff in the game, that they're able to keep themselves healthy and able to cope with this very, very traumatic things that they see. What's added to this contract, it's very important. This is a new thing that we are doing with this at the police department. We are incorporating wellness check-ins for all of our employees. That is both of our sworn officers as well as our professional staff. They will actually have a check-in with a psychologist under this contract to basically help move them along. And we're ensuring that our employees are at the best they possibly can be.
Thank you very much. And the physical health, a lot of times you can look at a police officer and they look like perfect physical specimen, but the public and myself included don't have a clue as to the wear and tear, the mental part of the job, and the things that they can never get out of their mind that they've seen with the job. Thank you for those answers, Chief. Those are my questions on that item. The next item that I have
Item 4.
is number 4.
Mm-hmm.
On that item, this has to do with the city's participation in the Clean Power Alliance. power ready solar and battery backup. And I happen to be the city representative on that, but the person that knows most about it is Miss Kathleen Mallory. And I'm hoping she can give us a little bit of an educational thing on what this entails and what it will do for the residents in the city. Please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. This is a program that's completely free to the city. The city procures the energy through the Clean Power Alliance. That's an investor-owned utility. It's the same as Southern California Edison. So
which we are a member of.
That's correct. We are a member of the Clean Power Alliance, and we opted into that energy program instead of procuring energy from Edison. And this Power Ready program allows us to procure free of charge solar and batteries storage at a critical facility. What's exciting about this is that it'll provide local resilient energy sources. What that means is that in the event that there's a power shutoff or there's a brownout, or there's some sort of emergency in which the system has to be shut off, we will have free solar and battery storage at the Development Services building that was selected because of the integrity of the building, as well as the size to provide energy and storage. We also picked it because that way we can access building records in the event that there's a natural disaster. It just made a lot of sense. There is an EOC that's connected with that building, and it has a generator. The system will augment that and will provide specific emergency service operations and resilience for the city locally. So it's really exciting. Very quickly, from the staff report, a few of the benefits with the program. Obviously, I mentioned the backup power. There's no money at all for the city to do this program, which is so exciting. And grid resilience, which is consistent with our climate action and adaptation plan, will be achieved with this. Additionally, it's clean, renewable, reliable energy and local generated energy. And it's also the city being innovative. We're one of only about 8 cities right now that are jumping on to take advantage of this great program. To Pat Brown's comment, energysage.com, ENERGYSAGE.com is where you can put in your zip code and you can get free energy quotes. What that means is free solar, battery storage. You put in your information, you upload your bill through the CPA or Edison, and they will shop free of charge for you your opportunities for solar installation and battery storage, if that's what you'd like. Great program. So happy to answer any other questions. And thank you for pulling this off the agenda.
Thank you very much for the information. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Kathleen. How about you said number 7?
Yes. Number 7. And again, thank you, council. This is an information technology department. And the reason I'm asking this is a large number that we're being asked to approve, but it has to do with items that oftentimes the public doesn't understand. I've had subscriptions to magazines and you have to renew them. And when you have subscriptions, sometimes people think, well, wait a minute, I'm spending $365,000. I better get more than like 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. This is like a one-time cost. Can you please explain how the subscription system works and why it's necessary? And I don't recognize you, but I apologize for your name.
That's okay. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Jerome Staszewski. I'm the Help Desk Operations Manager for the city. So speaking of this agreement, as you may know, technology is in a constant state of flux, of changing, and it can no longer really be considered a one-time purchase. It is more like a magazine subscription model, where to maintain the latest and greatest, to ensure we have a safe and secure environment, we have to continue to move forward and apply updates to our equipment. There's lots of folks outside that are trying to find a way inside, and this is one of our best ways to try to help make sure that does not happen. So to provide some more specific information on this, sorry, lost my spot. With this agreement we have through Microsoft, it is a 3-year subscription cost, and we look at about a total of $600 for each workstation over the 3-year period of time. And over that time, it's giving us access to the latest and greatest for operating systems for approximately 415 workstations in public safety. So it allows us to put the latest security and operating system patches on there, as well as the Microsoft productivity suite and the updates that go with that. It's also running a lot of our backend systems, such as our databases and other server-based resources that allow us to do our day-to-day work over in the public safety arena. And one of the things to consider with that is the agreement that we're looking at here does allow us to lock in the cost for a 3-year period of time. We're actually locking in a rate that's similar to an organization that was buying a minimum of 15,000 licenses, and we're only buying 415. So that's a huge savings that we're able to take advantage of.
That's the county of Riverside or something, right?
That's
That we're-
correct. Absolutely. Yep. They did a fantastic job negotiating this with Microsoft on behalf of government entities in the state. So this is our 3-year locked in prices that we have in place. But something we do need to consider is as we move forward and renegotiate these every 3 years, the prices continue to step up for us. So Microsoft has really never been known to decrease their prices. They've always increased. So that's something we have to keep in mind as we look to budget into the future.
Thank you. One question on that.
Certainly.
Can you give me a definition of a workstation? And is a workstation in a fixed building? Can they be in a car? Can they be?
Certainly. I use the term workstation to help identify all computers that we may use. So normally I would call something a desktop computer or a laptop computer or a MDC, which is in a vehicle that's mobile. So workstation is just our generic term to encompass all those different types of pieces of equipment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation, Jerome.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Turan.
Thank you. And thank you for the explanation. And also for drawing attention to the shift in the business model that many of the larger corporations use in their software dealings, not just with municipalities or large entities, but also with the general public. And just to really hopefully put a bow on it for folks, people who purchase Microsoft Office, for example, may have noticed that it used to be you buy a physical CD and you'd have it, and maybe 6-7 years later, you want to buy the new version of it, and you go back to Costco or Best Buy and you buy the new CD, you have it for another couple of years. And now what it is you sign up for their software service and you pay annually $99 a year or whatever they end up charging you, versus, paying $120 every 6 years. And so it's Microsoft is one, and Adobe, and this is a model that they all go to now. And so I appreciate you bringing that up so people are aware of it. And I would like to say too, this item did come to the Finance and Governance Committee, and I appreciated the conversation and discussion we had around it. I would like to point out, as was already put there, the County of Riverside did some great negotiation on the per workstation costs that we're going to be looking at here. And I liken it to recently, I think we had an item around fire trucks where the County of Los Angeles was purchasing, or a bulk purchase of fire trucks, and we're able to get in at a better price because we went with them.
Also, the refuse trucks.
And so it sounds like a similar model. So thank you for bringing that up and for bringing this item forward in the explanations.
Certainly, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, council members have consent items 1 through 9. What's the pleasure of the board?
Yes, second.
First by Terrell and second by Councilor Turan. Please vote. 1 through 9.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Our next item is J1. This is a report from the Finance Department. The subject of resolution of the City Council and Oxnard Financing Authority approving the issuance of up to $17,400,000 in principal of 2022 local obligation revenue refunding bonds to refund the Series 2012 bonds. And the recommendations that the City Council and the City of Oxnard Financing Authority Board approve and authorize the following. 1, a resolution of the City Council, City of Oxnard, approving the First Amendment to local agency financing documents and execution of certain certificates related to the issuance of the City of Oxnard Financing Authority of refunding revenue bonds for the purpose of refunding its outstanding Series 2012 bonds. And two, the resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Oxnard Financing Authority authorizing the sale, issuance, and delivery of not more than $17,400,000 in principal amount of local obligation revenue refunding bonds, special district bond, and approving certain documents and authorize certain actions in connection therein. And we have a consultant and we also have Betty George, if we have any additional questions. So we do have a consultant, but
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Betsy George, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm primarily just introducing Christian Sprunger from NHA, our financial advisors, and he's going to have the details on the refinancing of these bonds that will save the businesses really in these special districts on their annual assessments.
yep, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. My name is Christian Sprunger. I'm an Assistant Vice President with NHA Advisors. We are the city's municipal advisor. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me one moment while I do that.
Mhm. And by the way, Christian has helped us in the Finance and Governance Committee too, so thank you, Christian.
Yes, of course, my pleasure. I'm sharing my screen now. I hope you all can see it.
Yes.
Thank you. So this evening, as Betsy mentioned, I'll be speaking to you regarding refunding of the outstanding 2012 local obligation revenue bonds, Series A and B. The recommendation, as the mayor read it a moment ago, is that the City Council and the Board of Directors of the Financing Authority authorize the issuance of up to 17.4 million of refunding bonds and approve the documents related to those. There are 5 documents listed in the staff at the end of the staff report, and we'll touch on those on a subsequent slide. To provide a little bit of background, the 2012 Series A and B. To provide a little bit of background, the 2012 Series A and B bonds were issued with a combined par of 28.6 million, of which about 18.8 million is outstanding. They were issued to purchase underlying bonds related to 3 districts: Assessment District 2001-1, which is located around the intersection of Rice Avenue and Highway 101, CFD number 1, which is located at Westport at Mandalay Bay, and then CFD number 2000-3 around the intersection of Oxnard Boulevard and Highway 101. These 3 districts levy tax assessments and special taxes annually, which pay the debt service on the 2012 A and B bonds. The Series A bonds, which is the dark orange, or maybe on your screen it's brown, but the darker series in that chart there to the right, they are senior to the Series B bonds, which means that they get paid first effectively. Series A bonds were issued with an A- credit rating. The Series B bonds, which is the lighter orange colored series there in the chart to the right, those are subordinate and they were issued without a credit rating originally. Combined, both series together have a gross debt service that escalates at about 1% per year through 2032, and then it drops off in 2033. The first optional call date on these bonds is September 2nd of this year. And despite moves up in interest rates, there is still an opportunity to refinance those outstanding bonds for interest rate savings, which would reduce the annual taxes on the taxpayers in those 3 underlying districts. The bonds are expected to be sold directly to City National Bank through a private placement. We went out to an RFP. We requested proposals from banks. They submitted their proposals in mid-May. And City National Bank had the most advantageous terms for the city, which included a locked interest rate at 3.22%. That interest rate is compared to the average interest rate of 4.87% on the outstanding debt, so about 1.65% lower, which is significantly lower. Based on this difference, The savings are about 270,000 per year from 2023 through 2031 on those bonds. This equals about 7% of refunded par, or 1.3 million in present value savings. As a frame of reference, the city's debt management policy identifies a minimum target of 3%. So when we're at 7%, we're over double that target. And these savings would result in approximately a 12% reduction in the debt service, which should translate into about a 12% reduction in the taxes that are levied in those underlying districts. The graph to the right there visually demonstrates or shows this structure, with the orange line being the current 2012 A and B bonds debt service, and the blue columns there being the refunding debt service. So you can see that from 2023 through 2031, there's a space where the blue bar is less, so that's savings. And then in 2032 and 2033, we're essentially matching the net debt service on the old bonds. This slide shows the city's financing team for this refunding. Many of these parties have worked with the city on recent financing projects. The new names on this list are Piper Sandler and then City National Bank. Piper Sandler is serving as the placement agent for this transaction. They assisted with bringing in the bank. Piper Sandler was selected through a competitive RFP process. And then the bank, City National Bank, they will be purchasing the bonds. Their representative is Municipal Finance Corp. That team, that purchasing team, was also selected through a competitive RFP process and came in with the best, most advantageous terms for the city. To summarize the 5 documents that are listed at the end of the staff report, there's the authorizing resolutions. There are 2 of them, one for the city council, one for the Financing Authority Board of Directors. And effectively, these resolutions approve the legal documents for the financing and also give staff the authority to proceed with the refunding as long as it complies with the not to exceed parameters set forth. The not to exceed parameters that are set forth in those are an interest rate of 3.25%. We're at 3.22, so we're below that. A maximum par of 17.4 million, and then a maximum final maturity of September 2nd, 2033. Which is the same final maturity that's on the currently outstanding debt. So we're not extending any term of any debt here. It's the same term. The second item there, the dark blue box, the indenture of trust, that formalizes the relationship between the financing authority and the trustee. It outlines the terms of the 2022 refunding bonds, including the payment schedule. The third item there, that top box on the right, the placement agent agreement, that's between the city and Piper Sandler. It defines Piper Sandler's role as the placement agent for this transaction. It identifies the fee paid to them. That fee is contingent on a successful financing. The irrevocable refunding instructions, the bottom orange box there, that outlines the logistics by which the trustee will refund the prior bonds. And then finally, the First Amendment to the local agency financing documents. This is referring to the underlying documents for those 3 districts that are underlying these bonds and the amendments necessary to those to represent or to reflect this refinancing. Regarding timing, we brought this item before Finance and Governance quite a while ago, May 10th. Since then, we've been working to solicit bids. We received bank bids mid-May. We locked the interest rate in mid-May. Since then, we've been ironing out the structure of this refinancing. Assuming approval of tonight's item, we're on track to close this in 2 weeks. And then September 2nd, as I mentioned, is the first date that those bonds can be refunded. So that's the date on which those prior bonds will be refunded. This slide just re-summarizes the recommendations for tonight, twofold, one for the City Council and one for the Board of Directors. Since this has been read out loud previously, I won't read through it. And then finally, wanted to see if there are any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Christian. I kind of want to reiterate, I think, for the public, and see if I'm correct there, that we're looking at saving about 1.6 in interest rate, which equates to about 1.3 million over the lifetime of the bonds. And for a total, one good thing about this whole thing is that we locked in those rates back in May. So, and a potential savings or a 12% you know, which I think is extremely important. So I just want to thank our finance team, you know, for Mr. City Manager for doing an excellent job like they always do, you know, and I know that Councilmember Tehran and I and Basu were on the finance team when it came over, and the key thing is locking in that interest rate, which is really fantastic. So a great presentation, and thank you to the finance department, and again, Christian, for helping us out, and Mr. City Manager for an excellent team. So, Councilmember Perrella?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciated each time you talked about the entities that are involved in this. You made the comment that a competitive RFP. Are there any entities involved in this that did not go through a competitive RFP?
I was on mute there. I apologize.
No problem.
Some of the entities went through a competitive RFP previously. The only two that went through it for this specific financing at this point in time were the two that identified: the placement agent, Piper Sandler, and then the bank that's purchasing the debt, City National Bank.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your presentation. I appreciate that you're working for us, and this is going to save our residents. Basically, you're saving our residents, and I appreciate the staff. Ms. George, thank you very much. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, council members. So we need a motion on this item. This the recommendation of City Council.
So
City of
moved.
Oxnard. The Finance and Authority authorize the following, as I mentioned before. First by Council Perrella.
Do you have to read any more?
Second.
No, I'm good. A second by Tehran. Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, but let me want to go back a little bit. Do we have any speakers on this item?
We do not have any speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Mr. City Manager.
Just want to thank Christian from NHA. They're fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Happy 4th, all.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, our next item is the Finance Department. This is subject is 2021 Single Audit Report and Update on the Corrective Action Plan, the CAP. And the recommendation that the City Council receive the 2021 Single Audit Report from the firm Eddy & Payne and an update on the Corrective Action Plan, CAP. And again, this went to the Finance and Governance Committee. And Eddy & Payne, we have a presentation that will be live per our consultant's request today. And it was also pre-recorded under the corrective action under Measure M. So, Betsy, do we have?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm just the MC here tonight, introducing Eden Casarino from Eddy & Payne. And then we also have Miss Hiraoka here she's our Senior Manager of Internal Controls at the Finance Department. And she is presenting or available for any questions on the corrective action plan. But first, Ms. Casarino will present the audit report.
Okay. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. George. Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, members of the City Council, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me at this meeting tonight. It's my pleasure to provide you with a summary of our single audit report for the City of Oxnard for fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. We issued this report on April 15th of this year, and it was released on May 10th. I have a short slide deck if I can share my slides. Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Can you see my slides now?
We can see them. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So let me just go to the next page. So this will be my agenda for tonight. I will have a short introduction and I will talk about, sorry, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and which is part of the single audit report. And then I'll talk a little bit about internal control findings. So the single audit report consists of 4 reports, really. Let me just put my screen together here. I'm gonna put this over there. So the internal control report that is required by government auditing standards, that's the first one that is included in the single audit report. And then there's 3 reports that are combined into one large report, which is related to the federal programs. And they are the report on compliance for each major program, the report on internal control over compliance with each major program, and not the least, but the last of them, there's a report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. That is also known as CFA. So the CFA is what I wanted to talk about first. So the CFA is a report that's actually prepared by the city staff. There is a total of $6.56 million of federal awards that's listed on this report, and those are expended through 18 federal programs of the city. This does not include federal awards expended by the Housing Authority, which are being audited by another auditor. Out of the 18 programs, we identified 2 major programs, which are the CDBG and the Emergency Solutions Grant. Both programs contain COVID-19 funds, which is mainly the reason why those 2 were selected. So I might go back to my slide previously because I want to talk a little bit about the internal control report required by government auditing standards. So that report is actually related to the financial statements audit. As you know, we had provided a financial statements audit for the city of Oxnard, and it was released late in December or early in January. When we do a financial statement audit, we consider the city's internal controls over financial reporting in order to plan and perform that audit. We do not express an opinion on internal control. However, when we find material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we are required to report them to you. For the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021, it's my pleasure to report to you that we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control, which is great, that we considered to be material weaknesses. We do have one item that we considered as a significant deficiency. So kudos to your finance department and the city's management for not having material weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 2 reports that I wanted to talk about was the report on compliance for each major program and the report on internal control over compliance of each major program. So our report on compliance for each major program states that, in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of these major federal programs for the year ended June 30, 2021. So that's another clean opinion for the city. Again, congratulations. However, we noted 2 findings of non-compliance, which did not affect our opinion. We just wanted to point them out to you. So let's see. I wanted to go over to the findings, which is on page 3 of the report. Okay, so like I said, there's no material weaknesses this year. And then we have considered still remaining 3 significant deficiencies. One of them is new and 2 are prior year findings. The one that is new is regarding a finding that was actually reported to you by the Housing and Urban Development Department that reported 15 findings and 2 concerns. We had mentioned that in our report because they were still outstanding when we were doing the audit. However, the city had already has a corrective action for that, and it's going to be implemented. And we will test that during our audit for 2022. The 2 prior findings that still exist are, the first one is the indirect cost allocation. Again, that's already been discussed with management, and they have like corrective action plan ongoing for that. We will make sure to test that again this year so that we hopefully can clear that this year. The third one that we have, which is again a prior year finding, is related to IT general controls. We communicated to the city council in 2020 this prior year findings. They are not published in the single audit report because of confidentiality issues. So that is all I have for my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Answers.
Thank you again. I think it's really important that we commend again our finance department for an excellent job. We had no material weaknesses at all, and the findings were taken care of. And I think we had Betsy, this CDBG, we're working on that or took care of that.
Oops, sorry,
Okay.
thank you. That's the finding that Ms. Casarino mentioned is related to the housing department.
Right.
It's the Community Development Block Grant, and HUD, Housing Urban Development, was the audit firm that found those findings. And I know that their team there in housing is working diligently to clear those findings with
And one of the
HUD.
things too that, and probably Councilman Teran can remind me too, that initially when we first started several years ago, we had 150 something findings. And
Yes, 158.
158 and now we're down to 1 or 2, which is very, very significant. In the last few years that the audits have been audited, for that matter. But I just commend again, Mr. City Manager and the finance department for doing an excellent job, and Eddie and Payne for helping us out, and good education too. By the way, Council Member, with every single item that that's brought up, they're explained thoroughly to us. It's great to understand that, and I think it's really an excellent report. Council members. Councilman Teran.
Thank you, Mayor. That was actually one of the items I was hoping to touch on. So thank you for bringing that forward. I do want to thank Ms. Casarino and the team at Edie and Payne for this presentation. As the mayor had mentioned, I feel like every presentation you all do, I learned something new, and I hope the general public feels the same way and gets all this really great information that you all provide as our auditors. So thank you. Just to recap though, for members of the public, as was already mentioned, if you ever hear a talking point or a soundbite that the city of Oxnard had over 100 findings in an audit, as was mentioned, that was several years ago. I have the staff report here in the 14-15 fiscal year. And that's just under a decade ago. And now tonight's presentation, as we sit here in front of us, there were three findings that were not the most severe findings, the most severe being material weaknesses, and they were instead significant deficiencies. And looking at those three, two are in progress and one is a new finding.
Mhm.
And the auditors and our finance department have been very transparent about those items, and we are looking at what needs to happen to address them. I think I said this at Finance and Governance Committee as well, but for folks who continually like to bring up the past and the over 100 audit findings saying it's significant and it's concerning, I would agree that at that point in time, that was incredibly significant. But I hope folks can also see in the general public that going from over 100 findings to now 3 findings in just a few fiscal years, that is also significant. And I believe credit needs to go to our finance team and all the staff who've worked very hard to correct the issues that were found by our auditors. And thank you to our auditors team who worked diligently to find these things, bring them to the attention of the city so that they can be addressed properly. So thank you again, Ms. George and your team, and thank you, Ms. Casareno, for the presentation and for your work as well. And those are my comments, Mayor.
Councilman Perillo.
Yes, I'm basically piggybacking on Councilman Turan's comments. When things were extremely bad here, I remember that I can only speak for myself, but there were 3 councilmen that were here. One is not here tonight. Mr. Madrigal and Mr. McDonald were on the council. My stomach used to do flip-flops, wondering what's going to happen next. And tonight there's no flip-flops. The sound is loud, and I wish those people that raised Cain before were in the audience, but it's empty. There's nobody here. And you guys are the management, the council, and I do not mean that in disrespect, Ms. Brown, because you didn't raise Cain before. You were very thorough. But the people that hammered this city, I wish they were here tonight to listen, because it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, the auditors, of what the situation of the city is. And we're in very good shape. We're not perfect, but we're in very good shape. The council, the management that the council brought in, and the people that the management brought in to work for us, it's done a tremendous job for this city. Thank you. And I know that I've asked hard questions in the past when your firm first started, and I'm grateful that you guys hung around, and I'm grateful to hear the good news. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any speakers on this item, Madam Clerk?
We do not have any speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
But again, I have Eddie and Payne. I just want to thank excellent work that you've done for the city of Oxnard, our finance department, Mr. City Manager. We talked about our priorities and also restoration of our budgets. And we talk about the path we're going to take. And I think we're in the right direction. And I want to thank you so much for this item, and thank you, Eddie Payne, for excellent job again. Thank you.
You're very much welcome, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to thank you as well, the City Council, for the leadership that you had, provided through those years that, we were all, obviously struggling to make sure that all of these internal control findings were corrected and that you continue to move forward and progress. And hopefully those are not gonna, happen again in your watch, because I know that you understand the importance of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilman Sharon.
Thank you. And just one last quick comment. When we talk about internal controls, I hope that the general public can hear that and know that when we are using that phrase, internal controls within this organization is making sure that there are processes and mechanisms in place to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks or that no types of malfeasance are able to happen. There's this mitigation of that. And I always use the example of a cash box. Those are internal controls for a cash box. So for the city of Oxnard, imagine the scale of internal controls that we have, but we have them in place. And they're obviously doing their job, seeing as how we've done great work and made great improvements in this. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, as I mentioned before, this audits really help us out, and that transparency that we have for the city of Oxnard is extremely important. So to our staff, to our city manager, our finance department, and our legal and all the department heads, thank you for the good work. And this is receive and file. Do we vote on this, Mr.? No, we don't. If not, then we are adjourned. Happy holidays and happy 4th of July. Thank you. Thank you to Edie and Payne.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Eden.